I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Are you ready to win at the game of life? Well, throw out that rulebook and get down to the business of being the best and most authentic version of you. Welcome to the Human Design Podcast. We're changing the rules around success, abundance, purpose, love, and life, where we're creating a planet where everyone can thrive in a world that loves and supports each other. I'm your host, Emma Dunwoody, a qualified master coach, human design expert, podcaster, and entrepreneur that is living the life of my dreams, breaking all the rules while doing it, making a huge impact, and living my design and manifesting miracles on the daily. Join me as I break down and simplify everything you need to live in alignment with your human design, teach you how to recondition your unconscious mind for greatness, and to take back your power so you can manifest your heaven on earth and serve the rest of the planet at the same time. It's time to give up the fear and step into your highest potential, to reach for the stars, to know and live your greatness. It's what you deserve, and it's what the planet really needs from you. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. I was first introduced to the Analemma when listening to Luke Story's podcast, and it absolutely blew my mind. I mean, I understand the importance of water on our health and well-being, but I didn't realize the huge impact drinking coherent water has on our energy, vitality, and longevity. The physical state of water plays such a key role in our biology of life. Did you know that water is the conduit communicating between life, i.e. our bodies, the sun, the earth, and the quantum field? And the more coherent the water, the better the communication. And unfortunately, most of the water that we drink these days has been changed from its natural coherent state through this process of modern water systems and treatments. The Analemma is a tool that enhances the quality of our drinking water by transforming it into coherent, liquid crystalline state, a groundbreaking technology with scientifically proven benefits. I first experienced the Analemma last year after hearing the incredible benefits they had discovered from their 13 plus years of research. These were including things like improved skin, increased energy, balancing the gut microbiome, and research even shows that the Analemma water reduces your biological age after drinking it for just 3 months. I mean, look, I've been drinking it now for nearly 2 years and look at me. But seriously, I take this little device, the Analemma, everywhere I go because it makes water or any liquid I'm drinking coherent so my body can get the most goodness out of it, and honestly, so it can also detox all the not so great stuff in the water that I'm drinking more easily. So if you want to hear my first-hand line 3 experiences of the Analemma on my body, and you want to hear more of their powerful research, then feel free to tune into episode 231 of this podcast. Otherwise, if you're just ready to go out and grab one, follow the links in the show notes and make sure you use my unique code when at the checkout. Enjoy. Hey, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Well, my guest today is someone that I heard interviewed on another podcast not long ago and was so fascinated. So when this day came that I actually got to speak to Rebecca Zung, I'm about to leap out of my skin. So many questions, so many things I want to learn. But before I properly introduce her, at least before I properly speak to her, let me tell you a little bit about Rebecca. She's a globally sought after expert in the art of negotiation and high conflict communication. Speaking on platforms worldwide, she is also a best-selling author of several books, including Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with Narcissists and Win. Rebecca is also the founder of the proprietary Slay method of negotiating with narcissists, and her programs have transformed thousands of lives in more than 100 countries on every continent. Prior to this career, she was a top 1% attorney in the nation, that's in the US, having been recognized by the US News as one of the best lawyers in America. Well, Rebecca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. This is so fascinating.
Well, I'm super excited. And for my listeners, I just want to let everyone know that Rebecca is a 6-2 sacral generator and she is the cross of upheaval. So it's super exciting. Like, it's great to have you here. And the 6-2 profile, they really come into their role model, their wisdom, their visionary energy after 50. And it's amazing just hearing a bit of your backstory. You've kind of done a few things before getting to what you're doing now. So it just sounds like you're on the path. So before we get into, I really want to talk about narcissism because it is something that has touched my life personally.
Mm,
My mother was a narcissist, but I didn't
mm,
even realize until about 5 years ago, and she
mm,
died last year. I
mm,
was completely oblivious, and I'm a behavioral coach. Like, I didn't even realize until it kind of hit me in the face. And I
mm.
obviously dated a narcissist in my 20s. So, and worked in the advertising industry. I was blown away by my first boss and the way he treated me. I couldn't actually understand it. So I've got so much real life experience, which I'd love to dive into. Now, before I do, I would love to hear about your journey. We often start here at the dark night of the soul. For me, this is the place that I believe that it's our invitation into our purpose, because our purpose isn't this end result that so many of us think it is. In my opinion, it's the thing that as soon as we get invited onto this journey, onto this path to grow and evolve from that dark night of the soul, that's actually the beginning of our purpose. So if you can tell me a little bit about that time for you and then the journey to becoming the version of Rebecca Zung that is sitting with me today.
Wow. Such an incredible way to start this. I don't even know where to begin, like how far back you want me to go. But if you want to think about Dark Night of the Soul, I mean, I feel like I was dealing with narcissists even as a kid because I was bullied as a kid, and I'm half Asian, and so I had uh, I don't know, experienced some racism and bullying when I was a kid. And I know for me at the time, I think because my father was Chinese, my mother was German, or is German, that I really didn't feel like I could speak up. I wasn't the fighter. I was the freeze. I felt voiceless. And so I kind of just didn't say anything or do anything. And, my mother's also has an alcohol issue. And so, that I think also played into it. I really became like the pleaser. And also, I really believe that that's why I became a lawyer, is because it was always like, as Brene Brown says, like the hustling for your worthiness kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Like you end up attracting people into your life where you feel like, well, if I could just work harder, if I could just be more perfect, if I could just do it better, then they'll see how valuable I am.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
um,
familiar.
yeah. And I definitely don't do that anymore. After a lot of personal development and work and therapy and all the things,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
I don't feel like that anymore. I do what I do now because I love what I do. And I feel like I am in the place that the universe or God, whoever, whatever you call that, has called me to be. And I believe that um, I'm here to help empower people and be a conduit for the universe for that. But, it hasn't been an easy journey. I mean, I've definitely dealt with high conflict, narcissistic, difficult people all of my life. I like to think now that I'm better at pushing them out much quicker, but they don't, it never stops. I mean, they always end up there because there's such a high volume of them. There's a huge population. And so, the thing that I tell people all the time is like, it's not like the end game with it. It's you have to feel your own sense of value. You have to feel your own sense of power, and then not be twisting in the wind when they come around.
Yeah, that is so true. And I want to start with something that you just said that's fascinating to me because I was standing in the shower, where you get all your ideas and your questions. And I was thinking, it seems like to me, but I'm only a survey of one, but it seems like to me narcissism has increased. Do you think that it has increased, or is it that we're just becoming aware of it?
Oh no, it definitely has. There's an article by the Harvard Business Review that um, pointed to a study. It just came out this year that said that there's actually been a 30% increase in narcissism since the 1970s. And so,
Wow.
I mean, it's definitely much, much more. I don't know if it's because of social media or
I was going to say, what do you think's behind it?
I don't know. I don't, I think social media definitely plays a part in it. I think that there's also, uh, a whole generation of people that have been raised either by the baby boomers or the Gen Xers who are now like the millennials or the Gen Zers, and that generation of people, they weren't raised in the same way that we were. I mean, it was a lot of discipline in my household. It
Yeah.
was, kind of you're on your own. And I don't even know if my parents knew where my school was. I mean, they certainly weren't over there every day.
Yes,
That's for
same.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely on my own. I mean, that's kind of the thing with the bullying now, right? I mean, nowadays parents are doing the projects with the kids. They're standing at the bus stop with the kids. They're over at the school all the time. And I think that there's a kind of an overindulgence in a lot of the now millennials and Gen Zers, that there was
Mm.
way more overindulgence than there was when I was a kid. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I think maybe that might play into it too. I don't know.
Yeah. So, me being me, I've probably got ahead of myself. Let's start with the question in case my listeners aren't really even sure what we're talking about. What is a narcissist?
Yeah. So I like to say, kind of almost give it in layperson terms, but I also really like um, the science behind it. So it's a person that feels the most shame, the most pain, the most insecurities. They feel empty inside. And so how it manifests is through what we call narcissistic supply. They need an endless amount of narcissistic supply. So that might mean how they look to the world, their image, their reputation. That's diamond level supply. Coal level supply is how they treat other people or smear people or push other people down to make themselves feel good. And that's kind of like I call the dark underbelly, because it's not the side of them that they show the rest of the world. The show is the diamond.
Yeah.
And where it comes from is actually from trauma in their own childhood. And it could be overindulgence, it could be abuse, it could be actually, the recipient of it, or even witnessing abuse, neglect, and anything where during their childhood they constantly felt a sense of survival, and that fight or flight was going on with them. And when we all know that when we're in that survival state, that fight or flight state, that adrenaline and cortisol pours through our body. Well, when it happens on a regular and continuous basis with children, it actually causes arrested development in the limbic system part of their brain because of that cortisol. And so now, while the prefrontal cortex part of their brain may continue to develop normally, so that's the thinking, the reasoning, all of that, the judgment, the limbic system did not. And so they literally get frozen, stuck at 5 years old or whatever age they were. And when they then get triggered as an adult by any perceived slight or a tone of voice or an eye roll or anything there, they feel like they need to survive again, then that limbic system takes over and literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex, and they're completely run by their emotion at that point. And that's why you can't negotiate or communicate with a narcissist in the same way that you can any other regular or reasonable person, because they're not thinking from rational. they're thinking from emotion, and it's emotion. As a child, you're basically dealing with a toddler in an adult body.
Yeah.
And so the really scary thing, though, is when they're in that state, is that they will literally self-sabotage in order to carry out their vendetta. And so you're dealing with a person who's willing to take themselves down to take you down.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Like, I mean, maybe I'm being a bit dramatic. It's scary.
It
I
can be
always
very
remember.
scary. It can be, because if they're in a rage state, then you are dealing with somebody who's not rational at all.
Yeah. And I think the thing that used to baffle me as a kid is that people would all say to me, "Oh my God, your mother is amazing. You should be so grateful. You should this and you should that." And I'd be like, who are they talking about? Do you know what I mean? Like, I loved my mum, don't get me wrong, and she would be like a low grade narcissist, but it used to blow my mind, that gap of like who she was out there versus who she was at home. And that I would be so sure I knew something to be true, and I would take it to her and she'd just be like, nope. And it would be like, am I crazy? Like, I genuinely like look back and thought I was crazy half the time.
Yeah. From my understanding, and I just got to interview Sam Vaknin, who says that he is a narcissist, and it was really fascinating, because what he said was that they truly believe their delusions,
Yeah.
and so it's like their own survival mechanism to be in their own deluded world. And so they really do convince themselves that thing didn't happen, or you're the one, or whatever, because it's their survival mechanism. And so you really, that's why it's on the other person to come up with ways to be empowered in those situations or in those conversations, because
Mm.
you're not going to ever get, I always say never jade with a narcissist. I'm half Chinese, so I always wear jade, but never jade, never justify, argue, defend, or explain, because you're never getting a narcissist to go, oh my God, I'm so enlightened now. Wow, you've really convinced me. I'm so sorry. I really acknowledge you now. I see your side. That's not happening ever. And
No.
so where do you think you're going with all of that?
Yeah. And I was one of those people that just kept trying and trying and trying to be understood. And yeah, it just didn't, it never, ever got through, ever. So I'm really curious because I want to talk about your sleigh method. I love the way you talk about, because obviously we cannot control or change anyone other than ourselves. So we have to take our power back. So, what are going to be the red flags in a relationship, let's say, that we are in a relationship with a narcissist and perhaps we don't know? Or maybe we
Mm-hmm.
do know.
The beginning is always, it's too good to be true. It just is, it feels like, wow, where has this person been my whole life? Whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, it's like too good, too much, it's almost overwhelming. It sweeps you off your feet. It takes you, you're like not even in control of your thoughts anymore, because this person is just overwhelming you with the love bombing. And even in like the professional business relationship I was in, this person was like, oh, I can get you on this stage and that stage, and I can bring all these high level people into the business, and but really in order for us to do that, my name really needs to be on your thing, and it was like, I didn't really want to, but this person was like relentless and that's the other thing. They're sort of relentless. It's 100 emails a day. It's all these texts. They're everywhere. They're showing up. They're just like, you don't stop from them at the beginning. And if you try to slow down, then they're going to be like, oh, why wait? Why should we slow down? This is too perfect. This is amazing. We were meant to be. We were meant to find each other, and it becomes this thing. And if you try to slow down, like, wait a minute, let's think about this for a minute. No, I'm not ready to fly to Vegas with you and get married. We just met last week. Then they'll, regular person, a person who's from reason would say, sure, no problem. We can slow down. But a narcissist is there on a mission to lock you down. So they're going to be like, no, why wait? What are you talking about? This is meant to be. We're supposed to, and so they don't really give you a chance. But you do see the red flags at the beginning. You always do. I know I did. We tend to ignore them, whether it's something misaligned with what they're saying to who they actually are or what you're finding out, or maybe it's that they're trying to cut you off from other people in your life, putting people down, or maybe it's that everyone in their life in the past has been awful and they're the victim. My ex was awful. I had a terrible boss. I don't talk to my family. They're the victim. There's always red flags like that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I feel like you've just, reeled off so much of my mum stuff and my 20-year-old self's boyfriend. Like, it's just crazy. And it's so incredible how we just get caught up in it. And I know what you said, like we do actually feel or experience or become aware of the red flags, but it's just that the overriding part of it. So I'm curious.
I do want to say part of the reason why we do that is because they look for people who have those vulnerabilities, who maybe didn't, maybe had a trauma in their background or whatever. And so you're not going to have good boundaries. You're not going to, you're going to say, okay, fine, I'm going along with this ride or whatever. And then what happens is that you end up almost making excuses for them. Well, yeah, they didn't pay me back that money, but it's because they have something going on in their lives right now. They had a terrible time at work, or yes, he treated me poorly, but it's because he had a terrible childhood or whatever, and he's really sorry. And so what happens with us is that we end up thinking, well, I can heal this person. I can save them. I can help them. And it's something within our own psychological world that causes us to, it's almost like, if I can heal this person, if I can heal this relationship, then I heal my childhood wounds. It closes that gap for us. But of course, you never get there. You never get there. And because of the love bombing and the cortisol, so it's like your dopamine is going off in your brain, which is the addiction hormone. And so you literally become addicted to that person because it's love bomb, devalue, love bomb, devalue, love bomb, devalue. And so it's very variable. You don't know when they're going to love bomb you again. It's you're craving that. And you literally become addicted to that person.
Wow. So, like, how do we get out of that? How do we actually back away, back away slowly from the relationship and actually, untangle ourselves from that?
Yeah. The first step, honestly, is just awareness, because most people, as soon as they become aware, oh yeah, this person definitely has all these traits. Oh my God, I think they are narcissistic. And you know what? Whether or not they're actually NPD or whatever, doesn't even matter, because if they're exhibiting traits that are toxic or high conflict or not working for you, not serving your soul, you don't feel acknowledged, you don't feel heard, you don't feel like you matter in the relationship, then it's not serving you. It's not good for you. And so who cares what the label is? But once you start to see it, then you can't unsee it. You're like, wait a minute, I'm the only one who's giving here. I don't ever get anything in return. not that every relationship should be all about me, but usually it's of give and take, right?
Mm.
There's a care involved. You feel like the person deeply cares about you, like really wants to hear what you have to say, really wants to show up for you, really wants to be present for you, supports you. Narcissists are always a little bit jealous of you, and they don't really want you to have attention from other people or to see you succeed. It's certainly not more than them. And you always kind of feel that in your bones, in your presence. This person isn't really on my side. And I'm on their side. I show up for them all the time. I'm always, their proponent. I'm there. But where are they when I need them?
Yeah. Wow. So, one of the things I'm curious about, my background is behavioral coaching. And what I'm sort of curious about is I know for me, I was almost like addicted to my mother's attention, like it
Mhm.
was like a hardcore addiction. And to be honest, I don't think I fully healed it by the time she died last year. I mean, I, definitely put boundaries in place and all of those things. And I perhaps with a mother, it is also harder because, you know, um, because she will always be your mum. And in a whole big scheme of things for me, I don't want the listeners to misunderstand. Like my mother was actually a really good human, and she's probably lower on the scale. But how do we? The thing that I know for me personally that's been really difficult is actually like cutting those ties, actually putting those boundaries in place. Like mentally, I know that I needed to do it, but it wasn't as easily done because it was almost like she had this sixth sense that I just put a new boundary in place, and my bloody subconscious mind is like, but you need it. You need to go back. Like, so how do we unhook, like step right out of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, let me explain a little bit further what I was just explaining, because I think the first step is really, I mean, I would say the first step is putting an invisible shield down around you and starting to see them as a toddler having a tantrum on the floor, because that's
Oh, I
basically what they
love that.
are.
Yeah.
And just start observing their behavior rather than absorbing it. So I always say observe, don't absorb, respond, don't react.
Love it.
And part of the reason that you really need to put that invisible shield down around you and start to observe is because of that dopamine addiction that I was just explaining. There's a study out of Stanford by a gentleman named Robert Sapolsky. He is a professor there. He did a study on monkeys, and it was the dopamine addiction study where they were asked to hit some kind of a lever on a game, and um, if they got the reward every single time they did it correctly, then the dopamine levels in their brain remained flat. But if they didn't know when they were going to get the reward, they're hitting the lever, I don't know, it's variable, it's intermittent, just the anticipation that they were going to get the reward caused the dopamine levels in their brain to rise to the level of cocaine. And
Wow.
so it's the intermittence. And so, I mean, it's the same thing that gets people to go play slot machines, right? Like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get the three things that match. And they stand there with the pulling that
Yeah.
arm the whole time because, like, I might get it. I might get it. I might get it. It's the same thing that gets people to scroll on Instagram or whatever it is. It's that dopamine hit. And the same thing happens with narcissists because when they love you, the moons and the stars and everything
Yeah,
align,
you're
and
everything.
they're
You're
everything.
everything. Yeah.
And you don't ever get love like that or attention or showering from anybody else. And then when they swipe it away, it's worse than anyone else.
Yeah.
They ghosting you. Why are you so needy? What's your problem? Putting you down. And it might be even in the form of, a covert form, like, oh, that's amazing, you got that job. I mean, especially considering your background.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you for being able to pull that off. I mean,
Mm.
something like that, where it's like, well, I said congratulations. What are you talking about? What? I always call covert narcissists the pearl grabbers, because, like, what? Me? I was just doing this, I was just saying
Oh my
that.
God, that's like so close to home. Like I can feel my whole body reacting. Like, yeah, yeah. So let's
Yeah.
talk about your sleigh method, because I want to talk about the method that you've created, and ultimately this book of yours that I bought not long ago. I haven't read it yet. I'm so looking forward to reading it. But I want to talk about negotiating with narcissists as well. So let's start with the sleigh method.
Yeah, so it's an acronym. It stands for strategy, leverage, anticipate, and you. And strategy is your vision. Where do you want to go? What is it that you want? Is it, that you want to have a relationship that has healthy boundaries? Is it that you want to have, is it an actual negotiation where you're looking to have an outcome of some sort, or what is it that you want from your life or from this relationship? And so that's your strategy, that's your vision, that's your GPS. The second thing is leverage. And with leverage, you have to remember there's two different types of narcissistic supply. There's that image, that reputation, and then there's the side that is the dark underbelly of narcissistic supply, which is the game playing, the manipulation, the smearing, the whatever. So whatever it is to push you down to make themselves feel more superior. And the way that you can control a narcissist is by understanding what their diamond level forms of supply are. And there's always something with a narcissist. Some people say to me, oh, they don't have any. Oh, well, they always do. If they're truly a narcissist,
So
they're
what does that
definitely.
look like? Like if I was looking for their
It
diamond
could
level.
be prestigious friends, prestigious home. It could be status, money, prestige, the big house, the important job, or it could be even status within a neighborhood, or their friends, or how they look to their spouse, or how they look to their employees or their boss or their it's always around image, reputation, the I call it the window dressing,
Yeah, right.
and so there's that. Then the underbelly is always manipulating you behind closed doors, or within the game of the negotiation, or whatever it is. And so what you want to do is threaten a source of supply that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from manipulating you. And how you do that is through their own behavior, because their own behavior always leaves a long trail of breadcrumbs for you.
Yeah.
They always are. There's always a disconnect between what they're saying or how they're behaving and what they actually are like. And they always say things that are incongruent. They lie. They don't show up when they're supposed to. Like, if they're saying that they want to be, Mr. Dad or whatever, and I all I do is love my kids, blah blah blah, and you're in a custody battle, and yet they show up late all the time. They want to switch the schedule constantly. They're not present with their kids. Whatever it is, that's what you use. That's what you use. And part of my Slay program, I actually have a curated GPT. It's the Rebecca Zung GPT that we programmed with all my books and my podcasts and my YouTubes and all of that. So it really knows me, it knows my voice, it knows how to negotiate. And you can actually use that curated GPT within my program to upload PDFs or emails or court orders or whatever it is that you're wanting to use, contract, whatever, and say, hey, help me create leverage using
Wow,
Rebecca
that is
Zung's Slay method.
brilliant.
Yeah. And it'll literally spit it out for you. Like, here's, 10 different arguments that you can use. And here's 10 different ways. And then you can
Wow,
even
that is
say,
such a power. Sorry to cut you off, but that is such a powerful tool that you've given your community. Like, because I think that there's so many, um, especially women, feeling powerless. That what a beautiful tool you've created.
yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, you can use it to say, how is this person going to react? How is this person going to respond based on all of these text messages? How should I respond powerfully using Rebecca's method? And it'll even take the laws or procedure in your state or country. I was literally just talking to somebody in Germany last week, and I was like, well, I don't know the laws in Germany, but let's just go to my GPT, and it'll say, or Canada or Australia, wherever it is that you are, and it'll say, well, in Australia, this is the governing law, and this is how you can set yourself up.
Wow, that is so powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can even say, help me draft a first draft of a motion or something for contempt or a letter, that sort of thing. So you really can help guide,
Yeah.
the practitioners or professionals in whatever area you're in, whether it's a formal negotiation or not.
Yeah. So did we get the why of the slay method?
No, well, A and Y.
Okay, let's
So
go.
yeah. So A is anticipate how they're going to behave and be 2 steps ahead of them. This can be, just understanding that they need an endless amount of narcissistic supply. So whether it's um, baiting you, triggering you, um, uh, doing whatever they need to do, but they're like drug addicts with their supply. They need it. And so you're going to just be that hit for them. You're going to continue to be the IV. And that's why you're going to end up feeling completely depleted, exhausted. Uh, I mean, I just remember feeling like my soul was literally sucked from my body.
Yeah.
And that's because that's almost sort of how it is. And so this is why you have to put this invisible shield down around you. I have a coach on my team. His name is Tom. He calls himself Teflon Tom, because you just start to like, okay, and this is you. And then you can start using phrases to disarm them. And I do have free phrases for disarming narcissists with that your community can download at
Amazing.
disarmthenarc.com. Disarmthenarc.com.
Brilliant. We'll put that in
So
the show notes.
yeah, and so some of the phrases might be like, I can see that you're upset. We can continue this when you've calmed down. Your triggers are not my responsibility. We can. You always want to be in a place where you're demanding to be respected, because I don't care who you are or who they are. If you're a human being on this planet, you deserve respect. Period.
Yeah.
End of story. And so you just want to say, this approach is not working for me. This conversation is not productive right now. And just you say it without emotion, without contempt, without anger, just matter of fact, but firmly. And you just can say other things like, if they hurl some insult at you, just say, thank you for the feedback.
I
Whatever.
love that one. That's one of my all-time favorites. Like I've used that for years. I once got like attacked in a classroom by one of my mentors who's this huge narcissist. Um, and she was just standing over me, having just going for it. And I just looked at her and said, thanks for the feedback. And I just remember that moment, like feeling the power within me because I didn't react and I didn't cry. And she would often trigger people to get a reaction, so that this whole process. But that is such a powerful statement. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to respond, just respond, don't react, observe, don't absorb. Just, oh, okay. Thanks for the feedback. Or that's an interesting perspective. That's another one. Or I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I love it. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Or your position is noted.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that one. That's a cracker.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So tell us about the you piece. Is it you? Is that the Y in Slay?
Why is you? It's almost like my favorite one. I almost wish we could start with that in some ways, but it's like so powerful. And that is your mindset. You have to 100% believe that you're powerful, that they don't own you, that you're going to win this or whatever it is. Because, even like Viktor Frankl, when he was in the concentration camps, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He was like, he said that between every stimulus and a response, there's a space, and you get to choose how you're going to respond to a situation. And you can choose to respond every single time that you're a victor or not a victim. And you just don't allow them to have power over you, because the minute you get angry, the minute you get upset, the minute you are in any kind of state where they've dictated how you felt, you've given them your power.
Yeah.
And so you just want to take your power back. And I love The Wizard of Oz, where Glinda the Good Witch was standing there with Dorothy, and the Wicked Witch came along, and she shooed her away and said, "Go away, you have no power here." And she was like completely nonplussed, like, "Please, lady, you're like a gnat over here in my face." I mean, that's what you want to be like.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. And I suppose once we start putting the boundaries in place, once we start actually having these great responses, once we understand that we need to be 2 steps ahead, and that there is absolutely a trail of disaster. Again, this is my experience with the narcissist in my life. Like what they front up as and the trail of disaster that they leave behind are 2 very different things. In your experience, what about the healing process? Because I know for me, one of the challenges was, as I said at the beginning of the interviews, I didn't even know. I mean, I'm a really smart kid, like I am all over it. I'm a behavioral specialist. I can pick patterns in people 10 miles away. However, I was completely blinded to my own stuff. And then once I started to realize, holy crap, this is a pattern, like ex-boyfriend, bosses, mom, like other people in my life. It's actually taken me quite a lot of time. Like the amount of times I've said to my closest friends, am I the narcissist? Like there's been so many times that I've thought I'm the narcissist. So how do we heal from that? Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that same thought. And I even went to my therapist and I was like, and she laughed at me and she was like, definitely not.
That's what they all say to me.
She was like, if anything, you've been way too giving. Like I've spent my whole life just giving, because I was like afraid that of the backlash or what people were going to think or the whole thing. Right. And the thing is, if you're having that conversation with yourself, you're definitely not the narcissist, because a narcissist never questions whether or not they're a narcissist. They just know that they're not. and so they deflect and project and lie and deny their way through life. And it's all this, everything to cover up this scared little person who's inside of them. They're more like that scared little wizard who is behind the curtain than actually somebody who's all powerful. People who are completely comfortable with who they are and authentically powerful and feel a full sense of value don't go around treating other people like crap. I mean, that's just the bottom line. The only people who treat other people poorly are the people who feel poorly about themselves inside. And the reason why they attach themselves to you is because you have so much value, not because you have so little. It's because there's something to be gained from pushing you down or making you feel small, because that makes them feel bigger. It's not going to make them feel bigger to push down the trash, to push down like, okay, where am I going with that? It's only something of value. So it's, it seems counterintuitive because you're over there feeling so small all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of it. They're way more afraid of you than you are of them.
Wow. Which is fascinating to me, because I know that I feel like they just flat out don't care. Like they actually have no heartbeat for care for me. That's the way I've felt in the past. So
Well,
yeah,
and that's true in a way, because it's almost like if you have a really massive toothache or something, all you can think about is your own pain and your own shame, or I mean, your own pain rather.
yeah,
You don't think about anybody else at that moment because you just got this massive toothache, or if you've ever had a really horrible stomach ache or a really awful headache or whatever. If somebody came up and said, "Now care about me in this moment," you'd be like, get away from me right now. All I can think about is my own pain. And so that's why they really kind of don't care about anybody else.
yeah. And do you think as narcissism is becoming, more talked about, it feels like it's becoming more common, do you feel like there's potentially a group in society that's maybe pointing the finger too soon at people? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the word
Sure.
narcissist does get thrown around a lot.
No doubt about it. I mean, there's a legitimate personality disorder that is NPD, but then there's also, it's a spectrum, right? And so we all kind of have selfishness within us at times. And there are times when it's even more pronounced because maybe we feel sick, or maybe we're going through a crisis in our lives or whatever. And so, we may be more self-centered at that point. It's really the distinguishing factor is that empathy factor, that care factor, that do you have the capacity to feel things about other people or not? And, going back to what I had said earlier, it really doesn't matter if they're diagnosed or not. If your
Yeah.
experience is that this person is not making you feel good, and you just feel like they have dark energy around them, then you don't want that in your space, because energy really is contagious, positive or negative. And if that energy is polluting your space and you don't feel better after you've been with them, you feel worse, then that's not a person you need in your life. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I'm curious about kids. Like obviously I'm a child of a narcissist. What if someone's in a relationship, they're with a narcissist, they have children together? I'm really conscious. Again, I'm a behavioral coach, so I'm conscious of what like. I know for me as a mum, I'm very conscious of what I'm imprinting on my children or who I'm being because they're taking that in. What if you've got a narcissistic parent in that situation, and like as the other parent, how do we help support our children with their narcissistic parent and perhaps not picking up those behaviors?
That is a tough one. Every time somebody asks me those questions about kids, it's so hard. And they don't co-parent, they counter-parent. And so, what you want to do, especially if you're no longer together, is make sure that you have a very, very specific parenting plan. Make it as specific as possible. I mean, even down to who's driving where, who's picking up when, What's the time exactly? I mean, because wherever the gray area is, that's going to be a source of contention. And so you want to have maybe even a parallel parenting plan if possible, meaning you just don't even have to ever interact, or you interact as little as possible, unless there's an emergency or something. And so what that looks like a lot of times is maybe a week on, week off, and you do your exchanges at school on Mondays or Fridays or whatever. And so you just don't ever have to see that other person or hear from them, unless they need you to change the schedule or something. Because it's extremely difficult. I mean, and then the part about, making sure they don't have the traits or whatever, that's so hard because it's their parent and they're half that person. And so, the best you can do is do the best you can with the 50% of time or however much time you have, and make sure they feel whole, make sure they feel loved, make sure they know that it's not them, make sure they know that they can not take things personally. The Four Agreements is,
Oh, I
great
love that
book.
book.
Yeah. And so, never take anything personally, because the way people treat other people is a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves. So, and then, get them therapy or help or support if they need it, if you can. I know in the United States, there's certain states now that you don't even have to get the other parent's permission to get them therapy, which is kind of nice. But, sometimes you do. So it just sort of depends on there. But, you can even get them a coach or whatever. I mean, if you don't want them to formally go to therapy, but something where they can get support or help.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It just popped into my head is this empathy piece, because I was thinking, like, isn't a lack of empathy one of the key factors? And if
Yeah.
so, like, if you've got a kid, is it a good idea maybe buy them a pet, like teach them empathy? Like, could that be helpful? And can you talk a bit about this empathy piece?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to before with the pain factor. Like, if you have so much pain, you're not going to care about other people. You're not going to have that empathy. And so, as far as your kids are concerned, sure, teach them ways to have care, have empathy for other people. I know my husband's mother used to take him to like a nursing home, like, like they would visit like people in there, whatever, like, I don't know, whatever works for you. But I think that if you can teach them that, hey, I don't necessarily agree with this behavior, I don't necessarily agree with these choices, you can, express that without putting the other person down. I would be careful about that because they are half that person, and you don't want them to have shame around that.
Exactly. And I think that is the challenge, of kids. Like, at some point, we have to, just step back, be the best version of ourselves, and trust that they're going to navigate as best they can. Like, I kind of think, as a mother, I actually separated from my husband a year ago. And
I'm sorry.
as we are going through this whole process, it's like, you know what, the kids have been set up with such a strong base. There is a lot of, like, yes, I would need to be there for them, and equally at the same time making sure that I believe that they're capable of getting through the bumpy parts, and I think that really helps to fill in that self-worth piece. Well, if mum believes in me, then it must be, I must have what I need.
Yeah.
So I just realized the time. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to have to let you go in a minute. Before I let you go, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think people is important for people, my listeners, to hear about narcissism and how to negotiate through it?
Yeah. So if I have 30 seconds, I'll tell a quick story.
You can go as
So,
long as you want.
so, um, I always say you and you alone define your value, and people will think what you tell them to think, including narcissists. And the perfect example I had of this was back for a little while. I had practiced law, and then I became a stockbroker for Morgan Stanley. I had my Series 7, 66, and I had a financial background. But then I had an opportunity to go start my own practice back in law. And I had a business coach at the time who I told her, I said, "Ugh, people are going to think I'm such a flake." And I was living in Naples, Florida, and it was a very wealthy community, very affluent and kind of judgy, you know. And so I was like, I really was, I had like embarrassment around that. And she said, people will think what you tell them to think. She said, you can tell them to think that you're a flake, or you can tell them to think that you are the only family law attorney that has a financial background. So therefore, you're more
Oh, that's
qualified
good.
than any other attorney in town. Which story would you like to tell? And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll tell that story.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I held myself out. I'm the only one that has a financial background. I'm actually more qualified. Everybody there has lots of money. You know, they have complicated cases. And I ended up representing some of the most powerful people on the planet. And I mean, it's like a who's who of people. Very much people who were not going to hire a flake for their attorney. And so the moral of the story is that I made that happen. I stood in my power and said, this is who I am. This is why you should hire me. But if I had shown up as apologetic, I'm sorry, I know it kind of seems like I jump around a lot, that's what people would have seen.
Yeah.
And narcissists, I represented plenty of them because, you know, as CEOs and powerful people are narcissists a lot of times. They weren't hiring a flake. And so I will tell you that it's you who drives that conversation. It's you who has the power of persuasion. It's not the other way around. It's not, let's hope they see me and then I'll feel powerful. It's the other way around.
Oh my God, I love that. That is so good. And I just want to say, from a human design perspective, just quickly, we're going to just jump in. And you actually have the two what we call the warrior gates, and these they play a significant role. They stand, for those listening, they're in the design Sun and Earth, and they're the 39 and the 38, and it's like the gate of the fighter, the gate of the provocateur. Like these are people. These are like at their highest expressions. They are the warriors of light. Like it's a very powerful energy. In its low energy, it's very fighty, aggressive energy, but in its high expansion, it's a very powerful warrior like energy, which is really beautiful. um, and it's pretty cool as well because you have this gate 18 in your personality sun, which is the gate of correction. So this is actually an energy that is all about someone who can really see how to improve usually systems, patterns. So no wonder you were really good at the financial world as well as the legal world. Um, and yeah, and you also have the gate of opinion. And this is like, I feel like everything that you've shared is very much from a human design perspective, just right on the money, right on the money. Like you have a very, very powerful what we call an incarnation cross to have a lot of influence here in the world. And as a 6-2, people are very much looking to you for your natural talents, and they're looking to you for your like visionary wisdom. So the line sixes gather so much information over their lifetime, and once they hit 50, they are like that person that people are drawn to, like a moth to the flame, because of the wisdom that they have. So it's so beautiful hearing you speak about these things, because it's just from a human design perspective, it's all right here in your chart. So
That's so amazing. I actually call my team Team Light, and every morning I always say, "Good
love
morning,
that.
Team Light. You're my, you know, we're making a difference in the world. It's a beautiful day to transform lives." I always say that. It's so funny that you would say that.
Yeah. Well, it's not funny. It's just there in your chart. So it's beautiful.
Oh, I want to. How can I get a copy of this and get more information on this? Can you send me
Well,
something?
yeah, absolutely. I can send you the link. You can get your chart on my website. This We've got so many resources, but we'll sort you out. We'll take care of you. Maybe I don't actually do, I call them unpacks. I don't do them anymore, but I'll do one for you. So we'll send you all of those informations.
Thank
All of that
you.
information.
Yes, I'm so curious.
Can you just let everyone know, all the listeners know, where they can find you, whether it's on social media or your website?
Yeah, well, my YouTube channel is rebeccazung.tv. My website is rebeccazung.com. On my website, I have tons of free resources. I also have everything about all my courses is there. And then my Instagram is at rebeccazung.
Amazing. And you've got books and you've got a podcast, yeah?
So many books. Oh, yeah. I mean, I should have probably mentioned that, but that's also on my website. So Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. Negotiate Like You Matter, Breaking Free, a Step-by-Step Divorce Guide. Those are all available wherever you buy books. So,
oh my God,
yeah.
I love it. It's so good. Yeah. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being here. It's been such an enlightening experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So fun.
And thank you everyone for listening along today. I trust you got what you needed from today's episode, and I so look forward to having you on the next one. Bye for now. Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.